Good morning, y'all. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of April, 2024. And I hope you had a good Monday. I took part of the day off. I had something to do. So I took part of the day off and then just hung around the house, did some mowing, cleaning up, doing some other things. But yeah, it was a decent Monday. And today is Tuesday, y'all. We're almost halfway through the week, 2 days in. Looking forward to the weekend. Be in prayer, if you would, for Steve from our church is at the doctor right now and got some things going on. Steve needs some prayer. Um, so just please pray for him and be in prayer for Laurel Bardwell. She is the wife of a missionary to Ukraine, Daniel Bardwell, and she is on her way to America, flying home to Florida to spend some time down there. And then next week, Brother Bardwell, Sister Bardwell, and their son Benaiah are on the way, and they should be pretty about halfway across by this point, across the ocean, probably, maybe a little closer. Be in prayer for them. Um, and then I think next week, Brother Bardwell's coming back, so be in prayer for them and their travels home. For Brother Bardwell and their other son. And they're going to spend about a month back, or he is, and then go back, and she'll be here for probably about a year. So please bring in prayer for them. Pray for one another. And the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Prayer matters. Your prayer life matters. The more time you spend with God, the closer you're going to be. And if you can't do anything else, if you feel like there's nothing else you can do for the Lord, you can pray. And I pray that you do. I had to check and make sure my microphone is on. I pray that you pray. Please pray. Pray for me. Be like my grandma. Before she graduated and went home to be with the Lord, she asked me what she could do while she's waiting. I said, well, Grandma, you can pray. And I said, you can pray for me. And as most of y'all know, she said, I have prayed for you. I prayed you'd get saved, and you got saved. And I prayed you become a preacher, and you became a preacher. So I praise my grandma, praise the Lord for my grandma and her prayers. All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. We're going to continue on, start look at verse 25. And we're going to look at the difference between staying unmarried and being married. And so, and we're going to touch on remarriage. I know I did that devotion last night, marriage, divorce, and remarriage. I never really touched on the remarriage part, other than God does permit a divorced person to remarry. He, as Paul writes, it'd be better to stay unmarried. However, God does permit you to remarry, especially when it comes to these things in the Bible that divorce. There are reasons for divorce. One is an unbelieving spouse leaving. There's one. Fornication and adultery. There's two. And three, if you're with an abusive spouse, you can divorce scripturally. But now we're going to look at remarriage part. Staying single versus being married and being remarried. Look at verse 25. Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose, therefore, that this is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man to be so to be a virgin or single, for that matter. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loose. He's saying if you're bound to a wife, don't seek to be loosed from her. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. This can be interpreted one of two ways. One, you're free of a wife and you have never been married. But number two, loosed means you've been freed, you've been divorced as well. So it has a dual application here. So he says here, art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. But if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. He's saying if you get married, you've not sinned. If you get remarried, you've not sinned. As long as this has been scriptural. Let's put this in context. If you're divorced and you're scripturally divorced, you can remarry. But if you're getting divorced simply as on a whim, you don't want to be married anymore, that's not a reason for a divorce. There are three three outlines for divorce in the Bible. And if you're divorcing because you've committed adultery and then you fornicated and you marry that person you fornicated with, or you marry somebody else, guess what? You're going to continue to have trouble in your marriage, your next marriage. Those things that you did in your other marriage, they're going to follow you into your next marriage. And you've got to be careful with these things. But if, verse 20, and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. Verse 29, but this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. Now, I don't fully understand that passage. I'm just going to be very honest. I need to study it out because I don't quite understand what he's talking about there. But look at verse 32. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried care for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. He's saying somebody that's a Christian that's not married can focus his life completely on God. And I guess that's probably what he's talking about in those other couple verses there. But he that is unmarried, he can dedicate everything he has to serving God. Because look at verse 33. But he that is married, care for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. What does he have to do? He has to focus a lot of attention on his marriage and his home, and there's less attention on serving God. That's honestly why it can be difficult for a preacher or pastor to be married, because he has to find a way to balance everything out. He does need to dedicate a lot of time to the Lord and the majority of his time, but he also has to balance that out with his family. And if he doesn't, things are out of kilter in the home, and that causes strife and divisions in the home. The wife does at times get jealous if the husband, if he's a preacher or a missionary, spend more time serving the Lord than he does taking care of his family. He's got to be able to balance this out, and it's very difficult. That's why Paul is saying it's better just to stay single. But if you marry, you've not sinned. But understand there's going to be some time problems in this. Now, look here. Where was that? There's a difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord. So an unmarried man, he can focus a lot more time on serving the Lord and pleasing the Lord. And a single woman can focus more time on serving and the Lord and pleasing the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married care for the things of this world, how she may please her husband. See, there's that time and balance issue. Not only for the wife, it gets even more strenuous because she has to spend so much time to seek to please her husband, just like the husband has to spend so much time to seek to please the wife. But along come the children. And the Bible says the women are the keeper of the home. They're supposed to tend to the children. So now she not only has to balance out time with the Lord and time with her husband, but time with the kids as well. And it becomes much more stressful on the wife in a marriage situation than it does the husband. The husband's the provider and the protector. The wife is the caretaker of the home. So now she has more to balance out than the husband does. That's why husbands, I'll tell you this, And this isn't from the Lord, but by experience serving God. Husbands, you need to do some things to help around the house too. If your wife is stressed out and feels like she's overwhelmed and can't ever get everything done, you need to step up and do something for her. You need to help her out. If you're devoting a bunch of time outside of the home already for work and then for church, and your wife's overwhelmed at home, you need to come to your wife and say, Wife, what can I do to help this out? Corey jokes around sometimes that she married a good wife just because I do. I help clean, I help cook, I take care of things around the home. If there's something that she's doing and she needs to focus more time on it, I try to pick up things around and help her out. I've got experience, folks. Previously, I know that my wife can get very overwhelmed with everything, just like she knows I can get overwhelmed by everything going on around us. And so we, as a couple, have to take time to balance out. That verse, the false balance is an abomination unto the Lord, but a just weight is his delight, applies to every principle of your life, including your home. It has to be balanced out. Verse 35, and this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, as that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. Paul is saying these things to open our eyes, that we can make sure we're tending to the Lord. He's saying it's better to be single because you can devote more time to serving God. He says, he warns, look, when you get married, you're going to have all this going on. It's going to be difficult to serve God, but you're going to have to do it still, and you're going to have to balance it out, and it's going to be a struggle. He's not saying that you've sinned to get married, because if you can't live single, you should be married. And if God puts somebody in your life to marry, and it will become abundantly clear that it is his will for you, you should marry. And if you have to divorce, it's better to stay single, but you still can be married, but understanding you're going to have trouble. Those things that were a problem in your previous marriage may come into your current marriage as well. And you've got to not allow that to happen. And wrapping up in a review, when it comes to the home, a husband and a wife, you need to work together to balance it all out. That's all I've got for you today. Hope this is of a help and of encouragement. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. God bless y'all.